Everyone does. Judas, the traitor, the one who sold the Son of God for 30 pieces of silver. For 2,000 years, that has been the only way to describe me. 2 words: Judas, the traitor. As if my whole life could be reduced to a single night, a single choice, a single kiss. That is what they wrote about me. That is what they will always say. But let me ask you something. Have you ever made a choice that changed everything? A choice that, the moment you made it, felt like it made sense, and only later, when it was already too late, you understood completely what you had done? I have. But before I was the man holding this rope, I was something else entirely. I was someone who believed, someone who had hope, someone who let his own hope turn into a trap. Let me tell you what really happened. Not the version you were told, not the quick version, the simple one, the convenient one, where I am just the villain and the story moves on without anyone needing to understand me. My version, the whole thing, because you deserve the whole story. Not the summary, not the quick verdict. The story of a man who was real, who felt real things, who wanted real things, and who, in one decisive moment, made a choice none of us can undo, including himself. Starting from the beginning. My name is Judas Iscariot. I grew up in Kerioth, a small town in southern Judea. Dirt roads, stone houses, the smell of bread in the morning, and Roman boots in the afternoon. And I was the only disciple who was not from Galilee. The others were Galileans: Peter, Andrew, James, John, Philip, all from the north, with the same accent, shaped by the same landscape of lake and boat. I was the outsider. Iscariot, the name I carried my whole life, and that 2,000 years later still identifies me, means exactly that. Kerioth, man of Kerioth. The label that marked me as the one from outside. When you grow up being the outsider, you learn to watch. You learn to calculate. I was good at it. In Kerioth, they called me smart. My mother called me stubborn. They were both right. I was ambitious in a way the other disciples were not. The big ambition of someone who looked at Rome every day and saw, in every boot passing on the road, the confirmation that God's people deserved more. I believed, deeply, sincerely, that this people deserved a king, deserved freedom, a future where the children of Israel would not have to bow their heads before any man born outside the promised land. It was not just anger. It was faith, a burning, desperate faith that ached for a sign that God still remembered us. And then the rumors started. A man from Nazareth, a carpenter's son. They said he healed the blind with a word, that he made the paralyzed walk, that he spoke to a storm and it obeyed. People said his name with a different kind of whisper, not the whisper of fear, the whisper of hope. And I, who had waited for a sign my whole life, I started paying attention. The first time I saw him, he was preaching on a hill near the Sea of Galilee. I expected a warrior. I expected someone with the voice of a general, with eyes that had seen battles, with the posture of a man about to lead a revolt. What I found was something I simply had no category for. He did not shout. He did not pound his chest. He did not promise vengeance or military glory. He spoke like someone who knows a secret the whole world needs to hear, with an authority that came from no title. He spoke about the poor being blessed, about the meek inheriting the earth, about the merciful receiving mercy. I listened and I thought, This makes no sense in the world I live in. And at the same time, I could not stop listening. And then he looked at me. It was not the kind of look you give someone in a crowd. He looked at me like someone who already knows everything about you. Your fears, your failures, your secret dreams, your most hidden shames, and chooses to keep looking at you anyway. I had never felt so completely known by a stranger. That same week, he called me. Just that. Come, follow me. And I went. No negotiation, no guarantees asked. Because in that moment I was absolutely certain this man was going to change everything. What I did not understand then, and what would take years to begin to understand, was that when he said change everything, he was not talking about Rome. He was not talking about thrones or armies. He was talking about what was inside people, and I was only looking at the outside. The others called me by my name, Judas. Peter called me Judas. Andrew, James, John, all of them called me Judas. He called me something different, not Judas. Friend. I do not remember exactly when it started. It was the way he spoke to me on the road between one village and another, when he asked me for help with something for the group. Friend, as if the word came more naturally to his mouth than my own name. I heard it and did not give the word the weight it deserved. I thought it was a master's habit, a warm form he used with everyone. He did not. I would only understand that years later, in a garden with soldiers all around and a leather pouch at my belt. As treasurer of the group, I carried the pouch. Someone had to handle the donation money, buy the bread, pay for lodging. I knew how to count. The pouch hung tied at my waist. It had weight, a few coins, enough for a week. But you feel it. When you walk all day with something tied to your waist, it becomes part of you. I had not yet realized how that pouch was shaping me. I saw things no human being should be able to witness and remain unchanged. I saw him feed 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fish, and still have 12 baskets left over. I saw him walk on the water of the Sea of Galilee on a stormy night, as if the wind and the waves were minor inconveniences. I saw him stand before the tomb of Lazarus, a man dead for 4 days, already smelling of decay, and call him by name. And Lazarus walked out. I saw it with these eyes. I was there. And still, all I could think was, why does he not use this? Why is a man who can raise the dead not able to drive the Romans out of Jerusalem? But every time the crowd tried to make him king, he disappeared. He went up a mountain alone, praying while the moment passed. Every time I thought, now he is going to act. He was talking about forgiving enemies, about loving those who persecute you, about a kingdom he himself called not of this world. And something inside me started to crack. There was a night in Bethany that stayed with me. A woman, Mary, the sister of Lazarus, the same one Jesus had raised, came in with a jar of pure nard, a perfume worth 300 denarii, a full year's wages for a common worker. She poured it all out on Jesus' feet. I stood up. I said what any sensible person would have said. Why this waste? This could have been sold for a fortune and the money given to the poor. I was the treasurer of the group. It was my job to think about these things. At least, that is what I told myself. John, years later, would write something about that moment that I could not say that night. He would say I did not speak because I cared about the poor. I spoke because I was a thief, and as treasurer, I helped myself from what was put in. He was right. I had started taking out small amounts, a coin here, 2 there, the kind of thing that gets lost in the accounts. I did not even call it stealing. I called it compensation. It was only fair. That was the first lie. And the pouch started to weigh differently. Not on my body, in my head. Every time I put my hand inside it, I knew what was in there that should not have been mine. And I kept doing it. Jesus looked at me that night in Bethany. He said in front of everyone, "Leave her alone. Why are you bothering her? She has done a beautiful thing. The poor you will always have with you, but you will not always have me." I did not understand what he meant, but I understood the tone. I felt the heat in my face. I felt the others looking at me. And I felt, for the first time with undeniable clarity, something that had been there a long time. Resentment. Resentment towards a man I had left everything for. And he looked at me, not with anger, not with disappointment, with something worse. The kind of look that says, "I know you. I know what is happening inside you. And I still called you friend 5 minutes ago. And I am going to keep calling you that." I looked at the pouch on my waist, and for the first time I felt its real weight. Not the weight of the coins, the weight of what I had become carrying it. I do not know exactly when the idea entered my head. It was like water seeping into a wall, slowly, invisibly, until suddenly the structure is already compromised, and you barely know when it started. What I know is that on a certain night, I found myself walking toward the house of the chief priests, and instead of turning around, I kept walking. I told myself it was a plan, that I knew what I was doing. I told myself, when they come to arrest Jesus, he would finally show who he really is. He will call down legions of angels. He will show the world the power I know he has, but refuses to use. I needed to force the situation. I was helping. That was the lie I told myself as I climbed those steps. I am not sure I even believed it. Caiaphas looked me up and down. No surprise. As if he already knew I would show up. I opened my mouth and said the words I cannot repeat without feeling my stomach turn. "What will you give me if I deliver him to you?" I said those words. There are moments in life when you hear your own words and do not recognize the voice, as if someone else had spoken. That is exactly how it was. 30 pieces of silver. Do you know what that was worth? 30 pieces of silver was the legal price of a slave in ancient Israel. It was written in the law of Moses. If a man's ox killed a slave, the owner paid 30 pieces of silver as compensation. That was the price of a slave. That is how they valued the man who had raised Lazarus from the dead. Caiaphas counted the coins. 30, one by one, on the table. I held out the pouch, the same treasurer's pouch, the same pouch tied at my waist, the same pouch that carried what people had donated for his ministry, the bread we ate, the lodging where we slept, what had sustained every step that man took for 3 years. Caiaphas let the 30 coins fall into it, and the sound of the coins falling on top of the coins that were already there, that is the sound I wanted you to hear with me. Because inside that pouch was his livelihood. Money that men and women had given from the heart so he could keep preaching, healing, feeding crowds. Every coin in there had been handed over by someone who believed in what he was. I had just dropped on top of that the price paid to hand him over. The coins of people's faith and the coins of the deal with the priests. Mixed together, no visible difference. 30 of one origin, several of the other, all the same, all silver, all gathered in the same leather. From that moment on, I could no longer separate one from the other. If I put my hand in to pay for a meal for the group, I did not know whether I was paying with what had been given to him or with what I had received for him. I had contaminated the whole pouch. The betrayal did not stay hidden inside it, waiting for the garden. It was already there, mixed with everything from that moment. Anyone who saw the pouch from the outside would have seen the same pouch as always. Anyone who put a hand inside would have found both kinds of coin. The same to the touch, indistinguishable to the eye, but one had been handed over out of love for him. The other had been received to destroy him. I tied the pouch to my waist and walked out. The weight was the same as always, and at the same time, it was completely different. The city was quiet. The stars were there. Somewhere in that city, Jesus was sleeping without knowing. But he knew. Of course he knew. At the Last Supper, he washed everyone's feet, mine included. That is me telling you that. Mine. The man who was on his knees with a towel tied at his waist, holding my feet, knew exactly what I had agreed to hours before. He knew about the coins. He knew about Caiaphas's house. He knew about the kiss. And he washed my feet anyway. When he stood up, he looked around and said, "One of you will betray me." The others started asking, "Is it I, Lord? Is it I?" I asked too, not because I did not know, because I knew that not asking would give me away. He looked at me and he said in a low voice, only for me to hear, "What you are going to do quickly." In that moment, and I never understood this until this moment I am telling you about, he was giving me a last chance, not to hand him over, but not to turn my back, to walk out the door and never come back. I did not see the chance. I only saw the order, and I left the room, and it was still night. The Garden of Gethsemane was a place Jesus loved. We went there many times. Old olive trees, ground that seemed to keep the silence on purpose. I knew he would be there that night. I knew because I knew him. I had spent years watching his habits, the places where he sought solitude. I used that knowledge to hand him over. He was already standing when I arrived. That stopped me for a moment. I expected to find him praying, unprepared, vulnerable. Instead, he was simply there, standing, looking in my direction. He knew. Of course he knew. And the expression on his face, it was not fear. It was not anger. It was not the kind of expression of a man betrayed by someone he hated. It was pain. The pain of someone who sees clearly what is happening and knows he will not stop it. Not because he cannot, but because he chooses not to. He was suffering for me, not for himself, for me. I stepped forward. I kissed his face. That was the sign I had agreed with the soldiers. The one I kiss is him. And he said the word I had been hearing for 3 years without ever really hearing it. Friend, 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 do what you came to do. Friend. 2,000 years have passed, and that word still cuts like a blade. He could have called me traitor. He could have called me coward, liar, ingrate. He could have turned his face away. Instead, he called me friend, at the exact moment I was proving I did not deserve that name. In that moment, I understood, too late, what that word had been in the 3 years before. It was an offer. It was him telling me, in every small conversation, "You are my friend." The place is open. I had heard that word hundreds of times over 3 years, and I only really heard it when I was betraying the man saying it. As they tied him up and led him away, in the middle of the chaos and the shouting and the torches, he turned and looked at me one last time. Just a look. Quick, but complete. I stood there, holding the pouch with 30 pieces of silver, as the sound of their steps faded into the darkness. And I understood. Not gradually, not little by little. I understood all at once, completely, with a brutal clarity there was no way to ignore. What I had done. Not what I had planned, not what I had justified, what I had really done. I did not sleep. I spent the night walking the streets of Jerusalem with that heavy pouch at my waist, waiting for the moment Jesus would reveal his power. At dawn, the news started to spread. Jesus had been taken first to Annas, then to Caiaphas. The Sanhedrin had gathered in the middle of the night. False witnesses, a trial with the verdict decided before it even began. And then, Pilate. The Romans. The crowd shouting, "Crucify him." When I heard the word crucifixion, something inside me stopped working. This was not what I had planned. Arrest, trial, maybe exile, but not this. Not a cross. I ran to the temple. I threw the coins at their feet. Literally threw them. I opened the pouch and hurled everything onto the stone floor of the temple. The sound of the coins scattering across that floor still echoes in my memory today. I said, and I remember every word I said, "I have sinned. I have betrayed innocent blood." Think about that for a moment. I was the first man to declare publicly, out loud, inside the Temple of Jerusalem, that the man on the cross was innocent. The first. But I confessed to the wrong men. The priests were not interested in confession. They were interested in transaction completed. They said, in the coldest voice I ever heard, "What is that to us? See to it yourself." See to it yourself. They had already gotten what they wanted. I was just a tool used and thrown away. I stood looking at those coins scattered on the floor. I could not touch them again. I could not undo what I had received in exchange for him. I walked out of there, knowing that there was nowhere left to go. Not to the disciples. I had destroyed that with my own hands. Not to my family in Kerioth. What would I say? And here is the hardest thing I have to tell you. Not to God, or so I believed in that moment. I had committed the unforgivable. I had handed over the innocent. I had kissed love and called it the completion of a task. The mercy I had seen him offer to so many others, lepers, prostitutes, tax collectors, sinners of every kind, I was unable to believe could still be mine. And here is where the story turns against me. Because what he had been offering me for 3 years, that word, friend, was exactly the forgiveness I could not imagine still existed for me. The place was always open. Open the first time he called me. Open the night in Bethany when he looked at me knowing about the stealing. Open at the supper when he washed my feet. Open in the garden when the kiss happened. Open even in that moment with the coins on the temple floor. But I could not hear that word anymore. The pouch was empty now, and even without physical weight, my waist still ached as if it were still there. Some things you keep carrying after they are already gone. And then I went to the only place where silence was guaranteed. This is where you found me, with this rope in my hands, asking if that word he had been saying for 3 years, friend, still held for the man who had thrown it away with a kiss. I never had the courage to find out. I made my choice before giving him the chance to make his. And that is the only thing I want you to take from this story. Not that I betrayed. The world already knows that. Not that I repented. That too, I confessed publicly. I threw the coins on the temple floor. I did everything a repentant man would do. But repentance, without the courage to believe in forgiveness, gets you nowhere. I made a bigger mistake in the last hour than in the 30 pieces of silver. In the last hour, I decided alone that forgiveness would not come. I decided before giving him the chance to answer. The word friend was still in the air when I walked up to the place where I am now, and I could not hear it. The word was still in the air. I decided alone that it had already passed. And that decision, not the kiss, not the coins, not the rope, is the real tragedy of my story. You know my name. Everyone does. Judas, the traitor. But the man that he called friend until the last second, that one no one tells about.
There's a detail in the story of Judas that almost no one pays attention to. It's not the kiss. It's not the 30 pieces of silver. It's not the rope. It's a word. For 3 years, Jesus called Judas friend. Not once, not twice, hundreds of times. On the road between one village and the next, in small, forgotten, irrelevant conversations. In the exact moment when he asked for something for the group. He always called him friend. And Judas didn't hear it. Not because he couldn't, because hearing a word repeated every single day is the easiest thing in the world. And for that very reason, the hardest thing to truly listen to. The word had been in the air for 3 years by the time Judas pressed his lips to Jesus' face in Gethsemane. And it was only heard, only listened to with the real weight it carried, in the exact second it had become impossible to answer. This is the oldest sin in human history, older than the apple, older than Cain, older than the serpent. The delay in noticing what was always available. The offer repeated so many times we went deaf to it. The door opened so long we stopped recognizing it as a door. Judas is not the villain of the Christian story. Judas is the mirror of something every human being carries. A word spoken to him 100 times that he won't hear until it's too late. Maybe you're hearing yours right now and thinking it's nothing. The Gospels record the act. Judas betrays, Judas kisses, Judas confesses, Judas hangs himself. But the real sin of Judas, the sin that killed Judas, not the one that handed over Jesus, sits in a place the Gospels almost hide. It wasn't the betrayal. It was what came after. When Judas returned to the temple, threw the coins on the floor, and said, "I have sinned by betraying innocent blood," Matthew 27:4. He did something no other disciple did in that moment. He confessed publicly, out loud, inside the temple in Jerusalem. He was the first man in history to declare that Jesus was innocent. Before the centurion at Golgotha, before the crucified thief, before Peter understood, before John composed his gospel, before any of the 11 still alive opened their mouths. Judas confessed first, but he confessed to the wrong men. And here's the question Christian history has never wanted to ask with clarity. What if Judas's sin wasn't the betrayal, but what came after, deciding alone that forgiveness would not come? Peter also denied, 3 times that same night. Peter also looked at what he had done and broke into weeping. But Peter did one thing Judas didn't. Peter waited. He waited for the 3rd day. He waited for the garden. He waited for Jesus to call his name again. He waited for the question repeated 3 times. "Simon, do you love me?" And answered 3 times, undoing every denial. Judas didn't wait. Judas decided on his own that the word friend had already passed. He decided before giving Jesus the chance to answer. And that decision, not the kiss, not the coins, was the rope. There's a disturbing symmetry in the Christian story that no one tends to place side by side. Peter and Judas, both Galileans, both first-hour disciples, both who failed on the same day, both who repented that same night. And only one came back. Not because one was better than the other, not because one had more faith, because one managed to believe that forgiveness was still available, and the other decided alone that it wasn't. Peter became rock, the rock of the entire church. He died a martyr, crucified upside down, saying he didn't deserve to die like his Lord. Judas became a name for cursing in every language on earth for 2,000 years. The difference between the two wasn't guilt. They both had it. The difference was faith. Not faith in Jesus, they both had that too. The faith that the door was still open for them after everything. Without Judas, there is no passion as we know it. Without betrayal, no arrest. Without arrest, no cross. Without cross, no resurrection. Without resurrection, no Christianity. But the existence of Judas serves something deeper than prophecy fulfillment. Judas is the necessary counterweight to understand Peter. Without Judas, Peter's story becomes cheap sentimentality. With Judas, it becomes the gravest thing the gospel teaches. Forgiveness only works if you believe it still exists for you. And now we reach the place where the story of Judas stops being about Judas. There's a scene that needs to be observed carefully. When Caiaphas counted out the 30 pieces of silver and Judas held out the purse, something terrible happened, and the Gospels only hint at it. That purse was not empty. It was the treasurer's purse, the purse where Judas carried what sustained Jesus' ministry for 3 years, the money men and women had given from their hearts, so that this man could keep preaching, healing, feeding crowds. The 30 pieces of silver fell on top of those. And from that second on, inside that leather, the coins of the people's faith mixed with the price of the betrayal. Identical to the touch, indistinguishable to the eye. 30 from one source, several from another, all gathered, all silver, all now serving the same master. Judas contaminated the entire purse, not on the night of the hanging. In that second, in the house of Caiaphas, when he let the payment for destroying him fall on top of what was sacred. This is where the story of Judas stops being about Judas and begins being about every place in Christianity where this keeps happening right now. There's a contaminated purse of Judas in every pastor who turns the gospel into a product. In every service that stops preaching Christ crucified and starts selling guaranteed prosperity. In every paid anointing, every seed of faith demanded before the miracle, every promise that costs a minimum deposit, every book that charges to reveal the secret Jesus gave for free. Freely you have received, freely give. Matthew 10:8. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a direct command, and it has been violated systematically on an industrial scale under the Christian name. There are empires today that no longer preach the gospel. They preach the product sold under the name of the gospel. They have founders who became celebrities. Private jets paid for by the faith of mothers who gave what they didn't have. Bank accounts that rival those of nation-states. And in every one of those structures, what happened in the house of Caiaphas is happening again. The coins of the sacred and the coins of profit falling into the same leather, indistinguishable to the touch. Jesus drove the money changers out of the temple. He overturned the tables with his own hands. He said, "My house shall be called a house of prayer, but you make it a den of robbers." Matthew 21:13. If Jesus came back today, in how many churches would the tables stay standing? And for you who are listening to this, because this question isn't only about them, where in your own purse do the coins of the sacred and the coins of contamination share the same leather? The small lie you tell at work coexisting inside you with Sunday's prayer. Money taken from a place it shouldn't be, alongside the tithe given. The forgiveness you ask from God from the same mouth that refuses to give it to someone who needs yours. The Christian word you post, alongside the cruel comment you made yesterday about someone. Each of us carries our own version of the contaminated purse. And here is where Judas turns from a character into a question. Will you wait until the house of Caiaphas to realize you've contaminated everything? Or will you listen to the word being spoken to you every day while there's still time to answer? Judas had 3 years. 3 years of a word repeated on the road between villages. You are having your 3 years now. The word is in the air. It might be friend. It might be son. It might be come back. It might be anything that once called you back to a place you know you've abandoned. Judas decided alone that the word had already passed. That's the real tragedy of his story, not the betrayal. The decision not to wait. The decision not to give God the chance to answer. The rush to seal alone a verdict that wasn't his to seal. Judas is what happens when we decide we've gone too far to come back. The world knows Judas, the traitor, but the man Jesus called friend until the very last second, that one no one tells. And perhaps that is the true scandal of the gospel. Not that Judas fell, but that he was still being called friend while he was falling.
The same night Judas betrayed, another disciple also failed. But their repentance led to completely opposite destinies.